Boy, I went down on a rabbit hole on this one. Needless to say, this is going to take some time, but the Tampa Bay Bucs, they're about to have a top 5 all-time offense, and nobody's talking about it. Last year, we saw Tom Brady switch teams from the New England Patriots, a team he had played with his entire career, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we saw flashes of what that could be early on, but that team did struggle at times against playoff caliber teams, especially against the New Orleans Saints. However, following that week 9 loss to the New Orleans Saints, the Tampa Bay offense was a different story. It was a different monster than it was those first 9 weeks of the season. And that reminded me of a interview that Carson Palmer had on the Rich Eisen show when they were discussing whether or not to keep Jameis Winston on the roster. And Carson Palmer talked about how hard it was to learn this Bruce Arians offense, how many plays there were in the playbook that you had to be ready to call every single Sunday, that there was no other head coach, there was no offensive coordinator that expected you to be able to do more with a playbook than Bruce Arians. And that made me think about last year, how we saw at times this Buccaneers offense discombobulated, not on the same page, and really in reality, Tom Brady having to be a coach on the field, telling these guys where he needs them to be as the game is progressing. And we saw things click after that loss to New Orleans in that last 7 games. We saw something different, and we saw a team that went from scoring 27.7 points per game in those first 9 games of the season. Like I said, they had peaks, they had valleys, man. They had some really good games those first 9 games. They had some really terrible games those first 9 games. But after that, the offense, man, that was on a different story. We're talking 34.6 points per game, the last 7 games of the season. That is a full touchdown more than they were basically the first half of the season. And this, like I said, took me down a rabbit hole. This took me down wondering, chasing a question. How good could this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team possibly be in 2021? And as we all know, history loves to repeat itself. And so I thought I would search for this answer in history itself, going back and looking at a couple of the top 5 all-time teams and comparing them to how we can expect this Tampa Bay team to come out in Tom Brady's second year with the Buccaneers. I mean, how many points can we squeeze out of Tom Brady? Am I right? Like, we need to squeeze as many points as we can. This guy's not getting any younger, but he continues to defy age. And I am just not even going to put age into this equation. Tom Brady will tell us when he's done with football. I'm done saying he's too old. I did it for several years here on the radio waves in Portland. And that's one of the things that I've been wrong about continually. And I'm done. Tom Brady will tell us when he's done. I mean, we're talking about a guy that played last year on a partially torn MCL basically all season, from what I understand. So let's see, going back in history, how this correlates to our modern Tampa Bay offense. And our first stop going to be the year 2007. Yes, that's right. Tom Brady was the orchestrator of one of the best offenses of all time there in New England. A team that averaged 36.8 points per game. Just 2.4 points more than what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were averaging in the second half of the season last year, I might add. So we're not far off from what he was already doing in 2007. Just saying. So, Tom Brady, he was the first quarterback to 50 touchdowns in a season. He had Randy Moss. Randy Moss had a record 23 touchdowns in the season. You're talking about a guy that was basically 2 wide receiver ones in one. Dude, you had this guy on your team. You were rolling to the championship. You had a guy in Wes Welker that also had over 1,000 yards. This guy was awesome. He was a PPR monster just in the shadow of Randy Moss. And you're talking about a team that scored less than 24 points just once the entire season. One game short of being the second undefeated team. Thank you, Eli Manning, for that one. But the problem with this team, fantasy-wise, as we continue to cycle through these guys' stats, is that it was very top-heavy. If you had Tom Brady, you were extremely happy. If you had Randy Moss, obviously, like I said, you're strolling to the championship. If you had Wes Welker, you're a happy camper. But the fantasy value dropped off in this offense. They had a running back by committee, wasn't a lot there. The tight end, not really involved. We're not really talking much about the tight end in 2007. This was really a 3-piece fantasy offense. And so I look at this, and obviously we're looking at Tom Brady's height with 50 touchdowns, but the dispersal rate for the weapons is not there. So I look at this as this is a great measuring stick for what is Tom Brady's ceiling. What we know as of right now, what Tom Brady's ceiling is 50 touchdowns. 50 touchdowns in a season. Oh, Jesse, that was young Tom Brady. I don't know, man. I'm like I said, leaving age out of this equation. Tom Brady will tell us when he's done. This dude continues to sling the goddamn ball all over the fucking place. He's a fucking migraine for the entire fucking league. He's insane. I don't care how old he is. So let's go ahead and let's move on to our next stop, 2012. Now, 2012 is not really the team that we're analyzing. We need 2012 to really tell you why 2013 correlates to what Tampa Bay can be. And so when we move forward to the year 2012, we have another Hall of Fame quarterback in Peyton Manning, let go by the Indianapolis Colts after being out for a year on IR with a neck injury. Can't even feel his hands. And John Elway brings him into the Denver Broncos. And he's got Demaryius Thomas on one side, Eric Decker on one side. And he brings his old buddy Jacob Tamme in. He's got his old buddy Brandon Stokely there. And it's a true running back by committee. This really does look a lot like that 2017. Now, one of the things that we get at here is that this is really similar to Tampa Bay last year in the fact that it did not start off liquid gold, man. This team had its struggles offensively out the gate, and then we all remember they beat the San Diego Chargers at the time, not the LA Chargers, but the San Diego Chargers at the time. Went into their bye and never lost another game until the playoffs. And that team was unstoppable. You're talking about a Broncos team that was averaging 30 points per game. But we're only sniffing the greatness of what this team could be. It never even scored 40 points that season. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Like, it's a really good offense, but it wasn't really great. But this set the groundwork for the great offense. This set the groundwork for the great offense. The 2012 season set the groundwork for the 2013 offense. And as we move on, 1 year later, this team is averaging 37.9 points per game. We're talking about a team that scored 50 points or more 3 times that season. It went from didn't even score 40. to scoring 50 or more 3 times the next year. They added an old Wes Welker to the mix. They added Julius Thomas to the mix. They got rid of the running back by committee, and they committed to no Sean Moreno that season. That offense hummed. They had an offensive line. They had a running game that supported the passing game, a passing game that supported the running game, and a pretty damn good defense. It wasn't great, but it was pretty damn good. And we remember this. Man, these guys, they just were nonstop. They were a wrecking crew of the NFL that season. They got elite tight end play from Julius Thomas. You know, we're taking a look at these guys' stats, and we saw that second year leap in this offense under Peyton Manning, right? Super Bowl caliber quarterback, Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, second year on a new team with all the bells and whistles, right? We have 3 elite wide receivers. We have an elite tight end, and we have an elite running game. Is this sounding familiar right now? Is any of this sounding familiar? Because it's sounding really fucking familiar to me. I have a feeling right now, 9 years later, 2013 is going to come back and bite the NFL in the fucking ass, man. But it's going to be really good for your fantasy team, right? Because you guys are getting great value out of this team. Let's go ahead and let's move forward to 2020 and take a look at Tampa Bay. Let's take a look at what this team was in 2020. We all know the story. Tom Brady, once again, comes to town. He brings his buddy Rob Gronkowski. Leonard Fournette follows the train, and then he begs Bruce Arians to bring Antonio Brown into the mix, and second half of the season, Antonio Brown is let loose on the NFL. And is it also coincidental that these numbers that we're about to look at, that we're projecting into a 16-game season from this 7-game sample size, right? So we're taking a 7-game sample size, we're going to expand it into a 16-game sample size, and it's pretty mind-blowing. It's pretty fucking familiar. I mean, we're looking at a guy right now in Tom Brady who is far from being washed out. This guy who was on pace for 45 touchdowns in 16 games. So you're telling me this guy can't make 50 touchdowns in 17? You're telling me this guy's not going to be out for blood? Wants to pass that 55 touchdown in a season record by Peyton Manning? Dude, he was on track for 5,100 yards. He's not going to be out for blood to get to that 5,600 mark? Like, Tom Brady's on a mission. This entire team is on a mission. Like, when you talk about, oh, Jesse, how are they going to feed all these wide receivers? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the wide receivers. Let's look at the dispersal pattern based on the 16-game projection from those 7 games. It's pretty damn equal, guys. Look at this. Mike Evans at 130 targets, man. 1,300 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. That's really good value for where you're getting him in a draft right now. Okay, now let's move on to Chris Godwin. Not as many targets, 112, but this guy's super efficient. 1,282 yards. He's right behind Mike Evans. 11 touchdowns. Value. Antonio Brown. Oh, Antonio Brown might be the best value of them all just because of where he's being drafted right now. About, what, around 98, pick 98, something around there, 93, I think, maybe. 130 targets, 1,033 yards, 9 touchdowns. I am telling you, this season, all 3 of these wide receivers are going to score double-digit touchdowns. They're all going to break 1,000 yards. Teddy Bridgewater almost had 3 receivers with 1,000 yards last year. They're all going to break 1,000 yards. They're all going to have double-digit touchdowns. They're all going to have over 125 targets. Every single one of these wide receivers, if they're healthy. And let's remember, Mike Evans last year, half the season was playing on a half a leg. And he still caught 13 touchdowns, guys. Oh my. This is working me up. It's just, nobody's talking about this. It's insane. I've been working on this for a while because it's just been this deep rabbit hole. And as we move on, let's go ahead and talk about the backfield, because I think this is the one where I'm the most eager to talk about, just from the fact that everybody is like Leonard Fournette. And I know it's really close in the draft, but even Leonard Fournette is being drafted over Ronald Jones in drafts, which blows my mind. Let's take a look, guys. Let's look at what Super Bowl Lenny or whatever, man. What Lombardi Lenny. Let's take a look at what Lombardi Lenny did last season with all them rushing attempts, with that 7-game pace that everybody on this team is kicking ass. And Lombardi Lenny's getting 122 attempts for 378 yards, 37 catches for 245. But he got the TDs. He got the TDs. Only thing he's efficient at, touchdowns. Dude, this guy's never been efficient in his entire career. He gets a couple games here that's efficient, a couple games there efficient. All of a sudden, the hype train for Leonard Fournette gets going again. This guy's never lived up to his draft stock. He's never lived up to his pedigree. Meanwhile, let's take a look at Ronald Jones, taken in the second round, always been disrespected, never really gotten a true shot. Last year was his best shot. Dude, that second half pace, man, 230 attempts, 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. He gets to 10 catches for another 150 yards. So that is another 25 points. I mean, this is going to be insane value. All of this insane value when we talk about where these guys are going. Like, let's look at the total PPR base projections on 2020. The last 7-game projections. Oh, value town everywhere. Value, except for Leonard Fournette. He's the only one that's not returning you value. Even Ronald Jones is giving you good value in PPR, despite the fact he doesn't catch the ball. You know, we take a look at their schedule this year. Moving on, this is a team that's got the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL. They didn't give Tom Brady a difficult schedule as he goes to look to beat records going into this season. No, 4th easiest schedule. Look at the schedule. These vaunted pass defenses that he's got to get through. The running game, the schedule looks harder than it is. Half these defenses were good because their defense sucks so much they just got passed on left and right, talking about you New York Jets. This team is going to be so good. Nobody's talking about it. The value is there. It's all there for you. If you just take a look at the numbers, take a look at the projections, and tell me that they're not capable of this. Where are the targets coming from? A nice even dispersal rate by a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. That's where the targets are coming from. They're going to come from a quarterback that's going to be able to manipulate the line of scrimmage before the snap, take advantage of the defense, what it wants to do, put these guys in winning situations. He's going to be throwing touchdowns left and right. Look at him in the preseason. He just, first drive. Oh, crap. This sucks. Second drive. Boom, touchdown. Man, Bronco fan, it's going to be a flashback to an awesome season. As somebody who's just been, like, traumatized by Tom Brady over and over again as an NFL fan, get ready for it again, guys. And plug these guys into your offense. If you liked what you saw, please make sure you like, share, subscribe,